Hello, everybody. It's Sunfish. It's Wednesday, and it's January 15th, 2020, which means it's the day before January 16th, 2020, which is the day that we are getting finally the announcement of the 5th Smash Bros. DLC fighter, which means that I am here scrambling to get some kind of video out with my thoughts. Will it happen? I can't tell you. But if you're hearing this, then it has happened. Although the jury is still out on how many minutes there are before the direct actually occurs. So, I'm just talking over some drawing footage. I'm doing some, hopefully, stickers, maybe? Is this doubling as a potential merch announcement? I don't know. They're not gonna probably be like purchasable for a little while yet, but it's just a little preview of something I'm working on. So that's what's going to be going on in the background. I don't think I'm going to have any music playing. If you want to play your own music, you can play that at the same time. I don't know why more streamers or like podcasty kind of things, people sitting in front of a microphone and talking, don't do that, but who knows. Anyway, I mostly just wanted to get whatever miscellaneous thoughts I had about Smash Brothers and DLC and speculation and what have you before it actually drops. So, of course, the hype machine and the speculation machine is running wild. I think, just looking back, right now I don't feel as strongly as I guess I usually do, but right before a direct like this happens. Now, I mean, tomorrow morning's probably going to be another story, but I'm probably going to be like wanting to throw up, maybe. I get really nervous like right before the direct happens, but it's but right now at this point I'm a little less attached to the whole process as I was maybe a month or two ago. And I think, I was really like hyped up before the Game Awards and everything, and I think the massive disappointment that was the Game Awards to especially a lot of Smash fans who had very high expectations shook me of a little bit of that, I don't know, the folly of even having expectations to a certain extent. So right now, like, I have my hopes, and I'm going to talk a little bit about hopes / characters I think are likely, and I want to talk about especially the nature of likelihood when we discuss this kind of stuff, and just some thoughts and observations I have about that. And, of course the leaks, quote unquote, have been firing up again. Which, yeah, I guess I'll just get into that. Like, I think it's so funny and just like, does nobody else see it? I don't know. It, like, I look at the whole leak factory, I don't know what you'd call it, but like, it's so, I don't know, the psychology of all of this is really interesting to me, as psychology usually is, and the way people behave and the way people perceive things I think is really interesting, but in this case in particular, I think there's a lot of really emotionally driven reactions to things, and part of that is how we deal with leaks, and part of that is like the sort of the bandwagon effect of these characters that people put forth, which is so interesting and so like bizarre in a way, because I really, really, truly think that people have a hard time taking a step back and thinking about likelihood in more, I don't want to say objective terms, but like more sensible terms, I think. I think what happens is a leak will spill, and 90% of the time these are fake, or they're misinformed, or whatever. They amount to nothing. But the leak will plant a character's name in people's heads, and then they'll start seeing, conspiracy theory. Oh, Sakurai, had a purple scarf in this one video, and that means that Waluigi's gonna be the next one, or whatever. And like, I get that that's fun for some people. It's not really my preferred brand of speculation, because I think it's just sort of a very confirmation bias-y way of doing it. And look, I've come up with like my dumb Phoenix Wright conspiracy theories too. Like, I'm not immune from it, but like, it just it tends to be, I don't know. I think that one was at least like, here's an interesting coincidence about this character and the nature of another reveal for another character, versus like, what color is Sakurai's chair in this video or whatever. Or like looking at the pick of the day and like stretching things to mean stuff for certain characters. Like, I almost want to like play a game of like how many, like, take any proposed Smash character and figure out a way that the picture connects to them, because I'm sure you could do it for a lot of characters. But I just find it very interesting the like which characters the bandwagon has kind of carried forth, and it just is which ones like had a bandwagon earlier on and that bandwagon has completely died for one reason or another. Why Dante now? Dante was not on any, I mean, I don't want to say he wasn't on anybody's radar. I think he was always kind of undercover a little bit, but it was like, to my understanding, Dante's chances, according to popular opinion and popular belief, Dante's chances hinged on the director or creator of Devil May Cry saying, Dante would be cool in Smash Brothers, but let's get some of the games on Nintendo consoles first. And then, like, so it was like, no Dante basically deconfirmed until Devil May Cry is coming out for Switch, and so now Dante is, like, number one. And to me that just doesn't make sense, because you're only looking at the character's inclusion through, like, a single lens, and that's the problem I have with a lot of speculation, is it only takes into account, like, the fact, like, these very circumstantial kind of factors, and not, like, the holistic kind of inclusion of the character. And that's not to say that Dante is a bad choice per se. I would say, like, I have kind of a scale. I rated a bunch of characters and what I thought their likelihood was, and this was over the summer, but and I put him at like a 3 to 4, maybe 3.5 to 4 out of 5. He's perfectly reasonable. But here's the thing. What I don't really see a lot of the speculation doing is thinking about characters relative to each other. People will latch onto a character. I really want, somebody said, I'm trying to think of a character who isn't in the mix. Chibi-Robo. Somebody said Chibi-Robo's name, and so I really think it's going to be Chibi-Robo. I think there's evidence that we're going to get a new Chibi-Robo game, and that means that if Chibi-Robo releases for Switch, or they say it in a direct, then they can tie that into Chibi-Robo being in, or they just announced, like, BioShock. They just announced BioShock for Switch. So that would be a good example of, like, I think it's a little too close to the direct for people to actually make this claim, but it would be like people, if we add a few more days or a few more weeks, I would bet a small amount of money that people would start saying it's going to be a BioShock character, which again hadn't been on anybody's radar, but the game's coming out for Switch, so If I was really dead set on it's a not BioWare, BioShock. BioWare would be cool if get like Garrus Vicarian in there or something. BioShock. If I was like dead set that that's going to be what character it was, and I was seeing all these connections and making all these connections, kind of again that confirmation bias setting in. That's all well and good, but I kind of would get tunnel vision, and I think this happens with a lot of speculators, is they get tunnel vision and they don't think about that character choice relative to other possible character choices. And I don't know if now BioShock is necessarily a good example. I think gameplay wise that probably could be pretty different. You'd shoot bees at people and stuff like that. I don't know, like it could get pretty crazy. Now that I think about it, maybe that's a good one. But anyway, like, but just as an example, like, that's gonna be the like Western first-person shooter character who gets in, relative to other possibilities in that sort of field. And so, these are the types of things that I think we need to be thinking about more than just that I heard this character's name somewhere, and I'm jumping on that bandwagon. And I get why people do the bandwagon. It feels good to be part of what feels like kind of a cause, or like something to get excited about, even if it doesn't pan out. So I totally get that. It's just, and I wouldn't, kind of push anybody away from that. It's just a little bizarre to me what some of those bandwagons are nowadays. When I'm looking at the thumbnails that people put up for these speculation videos, why I'm sorry guys, why are we still talking about Gino? And look, disclaimer, it could be any of these characters I mentioned. It could be anybody. We know it always could be anybody. And then I'm Boo-Boo the Fool, I guess. Like, it's fine. That's the thing. I'm, like, detached from the whole process, so, like, enough that, obviously, I'm attached enough to be talking about it, but, like, I'm willing to be pleasantly surprised. There are very few characters I can think of who I would be, like, really genuinely disappointed. I'm willing to kind of overcome that disappointment. If they play fun, then I'm fine with it. But from where I stand right now, I just really don't get a lot of the bandwagons that people are still latching onto. And maybe a lot of it is metrics, and a lot of it is, well, Gino still has that big fan following, so we're gonna put Gino in the thumbnail or whatever. There's been this very, to me, strange emergence of admittedly pretty obscure anime girl characters, is how I'll put that. And I could just hear people rising up right now, but Puyo Puyo isn't obscure, don't you know this, that, and that? Like, I get, to a certain degree, the games themselves are not like the most off the beaten path games in the world. And the characters I'm talking about, just to air this out, are Arl from Puyo Puyo Tetris? Does it still have the Tetris name? Anyway, we'll just say Puyo Puyo. Cosmos from Xenosaga, and Reimu from Toho, I think? Like, I don't know exactly which games they're from. But these are the front runner, and there's, kind of this, well, we haven't had a standalone female character announced for DLC yet, so there's sort of a thinking that the time is right for a female character. I don't necessarily think that, there was a quota they had to hit or anything like that. Nor will I be upset if there's 5 dudes and Kazooie. I really think that representation is important in games. This is just an area where I really don't care. It's more important to me that it's a character that makes sense and fits well, and here's the thing, there are female characters who fit the bill there. So, but we're not talking about those. We're talking about these three whose names have been dropped by prominent people, and that's the only reason people are talking about them. And when I say that's the only reason people are talking about them, I don't mean that. I'll say Arl has a little bit more of a pedigree. So, those games are reasonably popular, that, it's... I get the impetus for inclusion. I think she was even voted most popular on one of those ballots that kind of collected data around the time of the Smash ballot. So there's been momentum for a little while surrounding Arl, and Puyo Puyo is still relevant. So, that's one where I'm like, that's okay, I'll give you that one a little bit. But, so I'm not saying that there's no chance whatsoever. I think Cosmos is honestly a ridiculous choice, and I will say that. I know Xenosaga had very deep philosophical themes. That ain't what gets a character in Smash Brothers, guys. I know Xenoblade fans really, or Xeno whatever fans really swear by those games. And I'm sure they're on a certain level very good, but the reason people are saying this character's name is because it's a holdover from when speculation existed surrounding Brawl, and we legitimately just didn't have that many female characters to choose from, nor did we have any semblance of a hint that they were going to go for characters as far outside of the Nintendo sort of circle as they have. Again, like I've said before, in a post-Joker world, we can kind of expect the doors are open a lot wider, and so continuing to limit it to the characters that people were floating around circa Brawl, and Cosmos and Geno both are these types of characters, it just does not make sense to me. I really think it's a kind of narrow-sighted speculation. And again, I could be wrong. Cosmos could be in the game, and y'all get to laugh at me if that happens. But just, these are characters who are not relevant, frankly. And again, you could say, well, Cosmos was in this game, in that game, in the other game. But again, you have to think relative to other possible choices. If you're only thinking about the one character, you can make a perfectly cogent argument. But then you have to consider all the other possible characters, which is what people are not doing. And it's what I try to do. That's why I made a document on, 50 different characters that I could just think of off the top of my head. And some of them I had no attachment to, some of them I didn't even really like, but I still tried to be objective about how I would rate their chances. And, I didn't necessarily want Minecraft representation. I don't hate Minecraft, I think it's fine, I just don't have any attachment to it. And it would feel a little bit, I guess, odd, I don't know, it to me wouldn't feel like it would fit, but at the time I wrote that document, I was giving it a pretty fair shot. And that's the thing, is you have to have a wide view of games, when you're doing this business. And I think Sakurai and his team absolutely do have that wide view of games. And that's what they're taking into consideration in addition to what fans want. What concerns me a little bit is just that the bandwagon effect gives a very short-term, very faddish view to the developers of what fans want. So, that also is something... Sorry. Oh my gosh. Something to consider. So, let's see. I made all of the Cosmos fans mad, and they are all fans. I don't know anything about Toho. I just thought that was a weird random choice. The only thing I know about Toho is Bad Apple, and all of the parody music videos that I've seen of that. So I guess if Bad Apple is a song in Smash Brothers, that could be kind of cool. I don't know. I'd like to see a Smash Brothers version of that music video. That's the only thing I could say with any expertise on Toho. So, anyway, now I've been pretty negative going forward. I want to talk about some characters who I do think either have a chance or I just particularly would like to see. So, to go back to Dante a little bit, just because he's kind of the current front runner of the whole discussion. By the way, I will say real quick, Ryu Hayabusa was like considered a shoo-in at one point, and then some leaker somewhere said no, it's not him. I still think that's a really fair choice for a character. Like, I think it's totally reasonable to consider him. That's a game series with a really long pedigree. We haven't had we had ninja characters in like Sheik and Greninja, obviously, but like something that's bothering me for a while, we don't have a katana user on the roster. Bunch of assist trophies use katanas. We don't have a main character who uses a katana, or a playable character who uses a katana. So now I think Ryu's like cool special sword is a broadsword, actually, which is really funny and sad. So he as good as his chances I think are, he's an anime sword boy. I'm sorry, guys. Does technically count and fall under that anime sword boy category. So there is that. I'll talk about Dante in a second. I just want to kind of run through another handful of frontrunner characters who I've noticed. People are... The Rex and Pyra thing is starting to resurface. Here's my thoughts about characters like Rex and Pyra. First of all, I think a first-party choice, or second-party, technically, is not super-duper likely for the first fighter pass. I remember when Joker came out, Reggie said that all the fighters in this fighter pass were basically chosen to elicit that same kind of like, whoa, no way, reaction. Assuming that we didn't have leaks. But, they were all kind of either surprising choices or choices that were like kind of a long time coming, but 5 years ago would have been completely ridiculous to suggest, I think is sort of the idea. So Rex and Pyra don't fit that bill because they were pretty strongly considered to be in the game. And Sakurai decided instead to make Mii costumes as kind of a consolation prize. They're also spirits, and I do think that spirits deconfirm, and the reason why I think that is because the choice of a character to be a spirit or an assist trophy, well, especially an assist trophy, represents a choice made about that character. And this is what people don't seem to consider all that often. I think people assume, well, they thought about that character, so that, gives that character a better chance, or they have the assets in there for the character, so it's only a small step to make them playable. Really, what I think it is if they ever intended to make a character like that playable, they would have kind of kept their cards closer to their chest. And we see other examples of characters who seem kind of noticeably absent from the proceedings until they appear. Or maybe they won't appear, but like I do want to talk a little bit about spirits and the lack thereof potentially pointing to certain character inclusions. So the fact that Rex and Pyra, were... We know for a fact they were considered, or Rex at least was considered. I guess Pyra is like his sword, so she would be in there as well. But, they were considered. Ultimately, they were... The developers determined that they were not going to go through with that choice. And I think this probably had several reasons. I don't really know enough about Xenoblade to be able to judge, but what my takeaway from that is they made their decision on it. And that's what the Mii costume or the spirit or the assist trophy represents, in a sense, is we considered this character, but ultimately they didn't make the cut. So that's my thoughts on Rex and Pyra. Another character, I'm trying to think off the top of my head of characters who I don't necessarily have any attachment towards, but I think could be likely candidates. And the last one who's coming to mind for that is Travis Touchdown, who, again, I think is just like kind of a flying under the radar, dark horse kind of character. The only reason I think people aren't talking about him is just because people aren't talking about him. And that's like, it's interesting to me because he has very similar circumstances to Dante, where the creator expressed interest in the character being in Smash Brothers. He actually really wanted him in, like, way back in Brawl. And I think the concerns were, I don't know if they had anything to, I don't remember if they had anything to do with the rating or what the deal was, but it didn't pan out. But we do have a No More Heroes 3 coming out. That was, I think, one of 2 Switch announcements that we got at the Game Awards, so I think it would be funny if it was Travis and they did, in hindsight, kind of tease that at the Game Awards. But he's been a front runner in terms of, like, interest on the part of the creator, which I honestly don't think gets you all that far. Who doesn't want their character in Smash Brothers? But, you know, I think the fact that he's sort of been on the table since Brawl, and not in terms of fan speculation, but in terms of developer speculation, and creator speculation, he's right up there and he is relevant. I do think he fits a very similar sort of mold to Dante, just wisecracking sword guy, kind of mold, but so I don't think they would both get in. I think that would be pretty redundant. But if I had to choose between him and Dante, I actually think Travis would be more likely. I think you could do a little bit more. I think he'd be relevant. I mean, they're both equally relevant in terms of marketing, but I think including Travis in Smash Brothers builds up a little bit more momentum leading up to No More Heroes 3. If we're just talking about it in terms of marketing, but also he's really flashy. And so, in terms of just a character who's fun, like, visually, and I would give him a little bit more edge over Dante, no pun intended. I almost forgot about Sora. Sora is still on the table. My thoughts on Sora pretty much are just, like, he's fine. Anime sword boy, I get it, but he's more of a cartoon sword boy. And, like, I like Kingdom Hearts fine. I don't really follow it that much anymore, but I played the first few games and I enjoyed them. I don't have anything against Sora's inclusion. I think the only issue really is, first of all, I do think that they would be careful to avoid any kind of entanglement with Disney. I cannot confirm this is just a hunch, but I just get the feeling that Nintendo does not want to get involved with Disney. Because they probably are a little bit nervous that Disney wants to buy them, which, like, yeah, that's a grounded fear. And, I'm speculating, I don't really know this for sure, but I just kind of get the feeling about it, and, they've, in their Hollywood dealings, they've, aside from Wreck-It Ralph, they've kind of gone out of their way to avoid working with Disney, or maybe not avoid, but just, like, they're not working with them in pretty much any capacity. They've worked with almost, maybe not all of their competitors, but, like, more than one of their competitors. Like, they haven't stuck to a single company, but, like, they don't want to get involved with Disney, whatever it is. And maybe I'm reading into this. Obviously, Disney Interactive posts publishes stuff on Nintendo platforms and so forth, you know. But I don't know. I get the feeling that there's a little bit of a tension there. I could be completely off the mark here. But more than that, the money, honestly, like, Kingdom Hearts, Square Enix, we know, is very stingy about their IP. You know, we can tell based on, like, we can tell there's, like, licensing troubles, looking at the other Square Enix characters who are in the game. And my favorite thing about Kingdom Hearts is the music. So, you know, Sora as a character, fine, he's fine, I guess. And a Kingdom Hearts stage, okay, you know, that could be kind of cool. But it's the music that's the best part of that series, and they would not be able to get very much of it. I mean, they could, but again, you have to think about things relative to other, like, these characters don't get put in a vacuum, you know what I'm saying? So, like, if part of Sora's price tag is the songs that you kind of have to put in, that's such an integral part of that series, or you know, if they're looking at Sora and they can get 3 songs, maybe, if that, you know, you have to get the English and Japanese versions of these vocal singles, essentially, and, I mean, you could put Sora in the game without having Simple and Clean, but do you really want to do that? I don't know. I would feel like it was kind of a missed opportunity. But at any rate, you know, you're looking, if they would, hypothetically, if, like, they'd have to pay as much for Sora plus 3 songs as they could pay for Terry Bogard, let's say, and 50 songs, like, I'd go with the 50 songs. I would go with the one that gets you more content and more material. And you look at all the SNK characters that were sort of packaged in with Terry, in a sense. And you know Square Enix would be charging for every single one of the characters if you wanted to put them in. You know, and that's not even getting into the Disney characters. I almost think Disney would maybe be cheaper, like, to get Goofy and Donald in there. But it would feel weird to have them in the game, I will say. But, you know, so if they really, really were dead set on Sora, if they really wanted it, if it was just, like, Sakurai's dream to have Sora in Smash Brothers, they could wrangle him, but, you know, it's, my big thing with Sora is, like, comparing him to other possibilities, especially in terms of that price tag. I just think that he would get beat out. So, I guess that brings me to Dante. I have mostly sort of said my piece on Dante, but what I wanted to circle back around to is Capcom, generally. So, we've gotten a lot of Capcom characters, and I think second only to Nintendo has such a strong stable of distinctive characters and characters who are really... The reason that Capcom does all these fighting crossovers is because they really can... They really shine in terms of the distinctiveness among all their characters. You know, you look at other companies and they don't quite get to that level of, like, characters who are that wildly different from each other. And game series that cover a lot of different bases. Nintendo, of course, does. But, you know, you don't quite get to that level with a lot of the other companies. And so that's why we have a lot of Capcom characters, is because there's just a lot of really good choices. And they all bring something different to the table. So we did get what I think is, again, because it's spirit related, probably a pretty significant deconfirmation in that we did get that Resident Evil spirit banner. So to most people, that sort of signified Resident Evil is now off the table. I always kind of thought Resident Evil was a bit of a long shot. You know, it's a little too spooky, you know? You have to have a stage. This is another thing people are not always considering. You have to have a stage. And what's a Resident Evil stage without the zombies? You gotta have zombies in there, and they just be too spooky. This is a game for good boys and girls, as we remember, and so I just... all those bloody zombies, I think, would be... It would, in a very important way, be too spooky for Super Smash Brothers. And Smash Brothers has gotten spooky and has had zombies, but those are some seriously spooky zombies. So, this is just one fan's opinion. I think we can all agree it's those two things contradicted each other. Anyway, I'm dropping the bit. We're not getting Resident Evil. So, you know, people kind of flock to Dante as the second choice. We have Devil May Cry coming out for Switch finally. But there's other Capcom characters that we need to talk about and who could bring potentially something a little more unique and flavorful to the mix. Dante has some stiff competition in terms of characters who kind of fill the same archetype or fit a very similar vibe to him. You know, he's again kind of like wisecracking, edgy, over the top, in terms of his character, and the tone of his game. He's a little different from other characters like this in that Devil May Cry is more like photorealistic and stuff, but Bayonetta is a thing. She's already in Smash Brothers. Hideki Kamiya, who created Bayonetta, worked on Devil May Cry, was inspired by Devil May Cry, and so Bayonetta is very much a spiritual successor to Dante. I think Joker is a little bit as well that vibe, you know, and maybe that makes them kind of good bookends for each other, but I just, again, and I will say one more time, if we're going for edgy, wisecracking sword guy, I think Travis Touchdown is a better choice, and maybe even a more likely choice. I'm not really sure, but you know, I'm not sold on Dante. I'm not sold. And again, even compared to other Capcom characters, if we're sort of ranking, like, okay, we're going to give this to another Capcom character, who's it going to be? I don't think Dante would rank highest. I think we can... So let's get into, finally, characters who I think do have a better shot. And you know who I'm going to say first, of course, but to talk about Capcom characters, you know, in terms of sheer popularity, yes, Devil May Cry and Monster Hunter and Resident Evil are going to be near the top. I think we can kind of discount Monster Hunter at this point. Again, Rathalos as a boss, I think, indicates that there was consideration. Now, to be fair, we didn't see a Monster Hunter spirit, like the actual hunter. So that could still be a possibility. There's lots of potential weaponry they could implement. I think it's maybe a little similar to Link. Just again, not in terms of playstyle per se, but in terms of just the vibe of the character. The sort of like outdoorsman, you know, wild fighter sort of character. And you know, it's not to say that characters have to be wildly different or they can't be similar to another character who's already in the game, but you know, a Monster Hunter, it could be kind of 50-50. It does seem odd that if they were like holding their cards close to their chest for a Monster Hunter reveal, that they did put Rathalos in the base game. But at the same time, there's nothing unlike Resident Evil in terms of a spirit character that deconfirms the inclusion of the Monster Hunter. So But you know, those are the most popular. But I actually think in terms of like just who would make a better Smash fighter, and a more unique and a fresher Smash fighter, of course I'm going to say Phoenix Wright. I think, and I talked about this in the other video, I'm not going to get into it too much here. I do think it was funny that for a while he was like, he like took the lead for like all of 2 hours in like right before the Game Awards. And that was it, you know, and then nobody talked about him after that. So I just think that, you know, these predictions are so fickle. But at any rate, you know, of course I think that he has a really good shot. And we're due for another Ace Attorney game, so that could get an announcement. As soon as it does, you know, then people are gonna say, "Oh, well, he would be good for Smash Brothers." So, you know, I still think that that's a possibility. But the other character who I think is a very distinct possibility, maybe even a little bit more than Phoenix Wright from Capcom, is Amaterasu from Okami. Very, very, very different style of character in every capacity. You know, we just don't have a character like that. And you think about not only Amy herself, but the stage, the music, everything would be so much different and so vibrant and so, like, you know, just visually and aesthetically and everything about it would be a really fun challenge for the developers to tackle. So, yeah, I absolutely think Amy is a very distinct possibility. And if I'm going to get into, like, conspiracy theory territory, there was that one pick of the day that was, like, wolf with a flower, and a horse. I don't know if the horse has anything to do. I didn't get that far into Okami. But, I saw people saying, "Oh, this confirms Cosmos because the flower looks like a Cosmos." And meanwhile, I'm like, it's a wolf with a flower. It's a wolf with a flower. Which video game character does that make you think of? It's not freaking Cosmos. It's Amy, guys. If we're gonna play this game, you know, that's all I'm saying. So, and again, female character, like, it just makes so much more sense. Yeah. Anyway, so I don't want to get too worked up about this. I think it would be really cool. Amy is one of those characters where I'm not that attached to Okami. I played a little bit of the first game and that's about it. But I would be really hyped if they made that announcement. I think it would be super cool. So those are my Capcom opinions. To get in a little bit into a few other characters who I think do have pretty good shots and I just don't see a lot of people talking about. The first one is another character who I have talked about, I have speculated. I drew a really neat picture. I think it was pretty cool. And that's Chell from Portal. This is very much a left field kind of thing. It would be, just for the reveal alone, would be so, like, and maybe that's the great thing is nobody is talking about it, so the reveal would be genuinely surprising and really awesome. And so, I mean, that's just the first thing to say about it, but, like, talk about a fresh moveset. That would be so cool to be able to fight with, very, very, like, a momentum-based character. And, you know, just, it would be a very different sort of, fresh, you know, just strictly in terms of the physics and the mechanics, would be really interesting. You know, Portal would be a very left field kind of choice, but I think it is very sensible for a lot of reasons. You know, a lot of people's first thought is like, Valve hasn't done anything on Nintendo, but I don't think the evidence so far, the patterns so far, haven't really suggested that matters a whole ton. And we do know that Valve is pretty open to licensing out their properties. They're I think, more willing to license out their properties than they are to make new games. I don't know if that's an I think more that, or as much as it is a they've pretty much said as much. So Valve would be, it seems pretty open to allowing for one of their characters to be in Smash. The character that people have talked about is, of course, Gordon Freeman, but and especially since we do have a new Half-Life game coming out on the horizon. But I haven't heard anybody talking about Portal, and I do think that that's more kind of fitting with the general vibe of Smash. It's most character choices do boil down to being fun, and I think if a character is fun, that gives them an edge. And if the game has that sense of fun, it doesn't take itself too seriously, then I do think that kind of gives the character an edge. A few more specific points in favor of Shell. Lost my train of thought there. This is if this is the Western first-person shooter character, I think it's a brilliant sort of subversion of expectations, especially since people were going in real hot on Doom Guy, or Doom Slayer. And Portal is like the anti-Doom. It's technically a first-person shooter, but it turns that concept on its head by making it essentially, not necessarily non-violent, but kind of reflective, not actively seeking violence, and really about puzzle solving and wits. So a lot of people have said in response to me talking about Shell, like, well, she doesn't attack anybody, so you can't put her in Smash. And it's just like, have you played this game, you guys? I mean, Smash Brothers, not Portal. I'm talking Smash Brothers. Like, maybe look at the roster one more time and get back to me on that one. Noticing a certain Wii Fit trainer and, Animal Crossing, Isabelle, like, we can't make that argument, guys. Sakurai has nice things to say about Portal. He actually, there was a game concert in 2009 in Japan that he helped to host, and they played Still Alive as part of the concert. But at the time, a lot of Japanese audiences hadn't heard of Portal or hadn't played it. So Sakurai basically did a let's play for them to kind of explain the context of the song that they were about to hear. So he's heard of it, he's played it, and he had seemingly a pretty high esteem for it. I haven't been able to find video of that event, but there's an article on Gamasutra, I believe, that talks about it. And I can link to that. But long story short, he did have the esteem, and then eventually Portal did catch on in Japan. There are Figmas and Nendoroids for the characters from Portal 2, so, just, I, as a Fire Emblem fan, I know it, for a series that's very popular in Japan, it's kind of an uphill battle to get Nendoroids and Figmas of those characters. They haven't done a whole lot of those, so the fact that they crossed that boundary is pretty significant, I think. There was Japanese made merch for Portal 2. So yeah, Portal's plenty popular, and it was at the time. It's fallen off the map because Valve, but it cannot, and maybe it's just like a lot of the people speculating are too young to remember this, but when Portal was popular, it was huge. And it was revolutionary, as games go. So, when we talk about the impact of a game on the industry and on the medium, I think just based on kind of what Sakurai prioritizes and what his biases are, I think he really takes that into consideration. And it's not just popular, which characters are popular. It's not just which characters the fans are shouting loudest about. He really is taking a much wider view. And so I think Portal probably is part of that. It's definitely on his radar to some extent anyway, and I think it fits sort of his sensibilities in a way that a lot of other Western characters don't necessarily. And it would make for a very fun stage. It would make for a very fun character. The stage, I would imagine, would maybe implement more portals and like repulsion Chell and stuff like that, which could also be part of Chell's moveset. But and of course GLaDOS would be like a stage boss. You can't have a portal stage without GLaDOS, I don't think. So, and maybe she could like quip about the characters and stuff from the sidelines. That could be kind of fun. Although I think people expected Gruntilda to do that, and she didn't. It would be a little bit more to implement, but it would just be a neat little Easter egg, I think. So, yeah, just in terms of a fun character, I think people haven't really talked about Chell very much, and I think that she would be awesome. Again, female character who is, in my opinion, a more sensible choice than the ones who are dominating the discussion right now. So that's my thoughts on Chell. And this footage was gonna come in handy at some point. You knew it was coming, guys. I gotta talk about Three Houses. So, once upon a time, like a year ago, the idea of more Fire Emblem characters in Super Smash Bros. Would have made basically everybody physically ill. Like, nobody wanted it. Nobody. And even the prospect, and people would say, you know, oh, that Edelgard, she could be in the Smash Brothers. She has even an axe. It's not a sword, guys. It's an axe. You said it's not a sword. Okay, you can't complain. It's not a sword. And at the time before the game came out, we were just like, no, like, either Fire Emblem fans were just done with the very idea of more Fire Emblem characters in Smash Brothers, or we just didn't want to be the target of more ridicule for having, like, quote-unquote too many Fire Emblem characters in Smash. But then Three Houses came out, and it's really good, and, like, everybody likes it. I don't want to say everybody, of course, but, like, I didn't expect it to be good, and it's legit my favorite Fire Emblem game at this point. Like, not in my wildest dreams would I ever expected that to have happened. But, like, it got big, and it got, like, it reached audiences that the series had never reached before. It hit a level of mainstream appeal and even critical acclaim that hadn't occurred before with the series. And after the series had gotten kind of a reputation for itself, let's be honest. And so, you know, I think we're a little more willing to forgive a Fire Emblem character in Smash Brothers at this point. And I think the bias is there, I admit, but I think if they were going to announce a first party, second party, whatever, Nintendo character for the first fighter pack, the only character, or set of characters perhaps, that I could see it being out of that crowd is a Three Houses character. But which Three Houses character, you ask? Well, let's talk about that. Most people offhanded will say Edelgard. Occasionally we'll get Byleth. The suggestion that I think is the best one, and not to brag or anything, but I was floating this back when it was the FE7 Lords and their tactician, but it's the idea of like a Pokemon trainer style character in Byleth who commands three different characters. They're the three house leaders, and you can switch between them. So here is the we got to talk about the juggling here, and these options, and you know how they might rank. Byleth, we'll talk about Byleth first, just on their own. Is the most, like, neutral choice, obviously, sort of the most immediately obvious choice. But the problem is Byleth is boring. Sorry, no offense, but like, yeah, this and it's just, I think, acknowledged by most people who play, and this is a problem with Fire Emblem. Very heavy air quotes here. Avatars, in general, player characters, protagonists. I would even put that in heavy quotation marks as protagonists. Is they're just they're intentionally made to be kind of ciphers, but then like the plot doesn't allow for any meaningful player agency or like even an attempt at insertion. So like the plot or the supports, it's just like they and I have a lot of thoughts about this I'm not going to get into right now, but like long story short, there isn't I don't think that there is like a genuine love for that character. I'm sure there are people out there who do, but I think it's just, well, the insertion thing doesn't really work, but this character's kind of like me, I guess, sort of a vehicle for my choices when it comes to the more interesting characters in the game. I know Byleth is not as popular as the actual house leaders because they've done popularity polls, and Byleth is nowhere to be seen on, anywhere near the 3 house leaders. So that's... I think just in a broad sense, Byleth is really kind of just a conduit to get to the drama of those characters. And Byleth does have their own drama going on too, but again, it's like far and away not the most interesting character out of those. And even I say this not just from a narrative standpoint, but like from a mechanical standpoint, you still have a sword. And I know it's a whip sword, I know it's a bone whip sword, and it's like cool and different, but it is still a sword. Yato was still a sword, even though it was a chainsaw sword. So like, there is an argument to be made that maybe they've smash-proofed that character a little bit, but not nearly to the extent that they have smash-proofed the other 3 characters. And basically what my argument here is going to boil down to is, I think this was a longer plan than just for the as soon as they decided on a DLC pack and had to decide the 5 characters. I think that because Sakurai could pay attention much more closely to the release schedule for 3 houses, if he had decided, or if Nintendo had decided for him, that there was going to be a Fire Emblem character from the new game, because to my recollection there weren't any Fire Emblem characters added in Ultimate, right? Let me go through them real quick. Corrin's the most recent. They didn't add anybody retroactively since like Smash 4 and the DLC. I know Roy and Corrin were DLC there, but so they did not add any Fire Emblem characters in Ultimate in the base game. And I think, honestly, I think it's fair to add new characters from that series because, like Pokemon, the whole appeal of the series is its vast quantity of characters who are all unique and different from, well, maybe not unique, but they're all different from each other, and nowhere is that more evident in 3 Houses. 3 Houses has a wonderful ensemble cast. And it would not surprise me at all if this was planned since the base game, but they just didn't put the characters in yet because they were waiting on a more opportune time to announce them. Now, they couldn't have known that 3 Houses was going to be as popular as it was, but they may have had a hunch. And they may have just had enough confidence and faith in the project to know that it would do okay. Or maybe even more than okay. I don't know, I can't speak to that, but just based on the proximity of that game's development to Smash's development, based on the pattern we have of, since Melee, every new Smash installment, including a new Fire Emblem character, up until Ultimate to this point. And that also, the other thing with this is I brought up this idea of smash proofing, or I use that word. And what I mean by that is the characters themselves were, I think, I'm going to theorize, conceived to mitigate the problem that people had with previous Fire Emblem characters in Super Smash Bros., which is to say, it's a bunch of anime sword boys, they're all the same, it's Marth and Red Marth and Buff Marth and Magic Marth, and that's that, and Girl Marth, and that's the joke, and Girl Marth's dad, Marth's grandson, never mind, they're, Chrom, yeah, Chrom is the new character, that's right, they did, okay. But, like, barely, come on, are we really gonna count Chrom as a new character? He is, like, the cloniest clone that ever cloned. I'm sorry. This is completely biased in favor of my argument that we hadn't had. But you know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. Chrom is, like, they had him modeled already. I bet they were going to add him, like, or they were. He's like half a Smash 4 character. Like I don't know. I might be building this castle on sand right now, but at any rate, I do think it makes sense that when they were developing Edelgard and Claude and Dimitri, and Byleth even to an extent, they were doing so kind of with the idea that they could be in Smash. Any one of them could be, or all three of them could be. And so, like, that's I don't know, that's just something that kind of occurred to me. Not one of them primarily wields a sword. And they're even, like, personality-wise and just the roles that they play and the vibes that they give off are distinct from the existing Fire Emblem characters in Super Smash Bros. And this might be getting into spoiler territory a little bit. I haven't myself played through the whole game yet. I know you can laugh at me. It's fine. But so I don't know. You just skip past this part if you want. But I think it's pretty common-ish knowledge that Edelgard basically plays in sort of the tropes of the series, plays into a villain role. And people have been saying for a long time, we want a Fire Emblem villain in Smash Brothers. We don't have a villain from that series yet. Ultimate's been very big on adding villain characters, adding rival characters. So just in that respect, Edelgard would fit the bill. But with the whole rivalry thing with King K. Rool and with Ridley, they built up, like, they're a rival to a character who's already in the game. So if Edelgard's just there by herself, then she's not a rival to anybody, except maybe Ferdinand von Aer, but I don't think that he's going to be playable, unfortunately. So, it's almost like you have to have, then that's the whole, it's called Three Houses, like, you have to have all three of them. I can't, and I know you could just have Byleth or Edelgard, but if it was going to be only one of the three, it would be Edelgard if this was like a minimum viable product kind of thing. But I just have a hunch that they might have set out, if not for this fighter pass, then at least for the next one, they might have set out to include all three under one fighter. It's just like they're in a better capacity, they're in a better space to plan for that. Sakurai likes Fire Emblem, and I think it is telling that these characters are really not playing into the sort of vibe, I guess I'd say. They do, like, definitely if you're a fan of the series, you can see the characters' footsteps, who they're following in and think of characters to whom the three house leaders are similar in a lot of ways, but that's like under the surface kind of stuff. I'm not really talking about that. But yeah, in a sense, like, Lyn never got into Smash Brothers, and like Claude is kind of a spiritual successor to Lyn. Ephraim never got into Smash Brothers, and Dimitri's kind of a spiritual successor to Ephraim, and so and that's oversimplifying those characters, of course, but you could say Edelgard kind of is a spiritual successor to Micaiah a little bit. And Arvis, and just like a lot. She's a lot, and she has an axe, so she's got a lot going for her in that regard. And again, I don't want to oversimplify these characters by any means, but it's sort of almost like they have distilled characters who people did want in Smash Brothers and didn't quite make the cut and couldn't quite make the cut. They're just not relevant anymore, and it's like passing the torch to these new characters who could do it. I will admit, it's a long shot. I think it would still make a lot of people mad, but and that's another thing, is I almost think like the 3-in-1 approach could almost itself be a way to appease, like, and which is ironic, because it's like, you said you didn't want any more Fire Emblem characters, so we gave you 3 more. 4 if you count Byleth as the teacher in the background. But would that not be so cool, guys? Oh man, that would just be the best. Like, I think I want that, like, in my heart, I think I want that more than Phoenix Wright. Like a 3-in-1. I essentially, it's for Claude. Like, it depends on how the other 2 play, but like, playing as Claude would be so cool, and it would just be great, and the stage and the music and going back to the stage real quick, like, it's not any character necessarily who I want, but like the idea of Garreg Mach Monastery being a stage and like having characters in the background come in, like on the King of Fighters stage, or it's King of Fighters, right? That's the stadium, the SNK stage, we'll just call it. But yeah, having the different students and faculty watching from the background, I think would be delightful. I would make so many comics about it. It would just be the best. And I mean, like, that's what I want. The music is amazing. Get some of that music in there. So, like, this is definitely the character choice that's like I've super come around on, and it would be in a sense very much a completion to what I think has been in the last year sort of a redemption arc for Fire Emblem, so to speak. But yeah, that would just be cool. I don't know that I have anything else to say, guys. I started off this video not being very hyped, and now I'm like, oh, I hope it's a Three Houses character. 35-minute demonstration. That would also totally explain, like, why they're packing both the reveal and the demonstration in one in one presentation, so Sakurai can just be like, alright guys, hear me out. I know. You didn't want any more Fire Emblem characters. But I did. And you did, really. Like, you did. If it's these guys, then it's fine, right? If you're watching this video, you probably did. So, oh, one more thing that I forgot to mention. I meant to circle back around to it, but I just got too darn hyped. Spirits. I think it is interesting, at the very least, and notable at the most, that we have not seen Three Houses spirits. Oftentimes, not always, but a lot of the time, what they've been doing is including spirits in Smash Brothers when a game releases as sort of a tie-in, sort of a promotional thing. And we've seen that this was, how we kind of were led to the conclusion that Resident Evil probably wasn't going to get a fighter. We got the Tetrominos, which, oddly enough, was sort of a deconfirmation for some people, who still thought it was funny to suggest that the L block would be a character. So that's some 2005 Game Facts humor for you right there. But we never saw it for Three Houses when that came out. And given the strong feelings a lot of people have about these characters, you would have thought maybe that would have been a good tie-in. People would have wanted to try and get those spirits. would have been playing Smash Brothers to as a result of that tie-in. And at the time the game came out, I don't think that people would have necessarily had very much expectations for this. Would have been after Banjo and Kazooie and the hero from Dragon Quest had been announced. So, like, I think people's Smash hype would have been kind of sated for the time being. I don't think people would have been all that interested in the prospect of Three Houses Fighters at the time. So they could have done it. You know, I just think the fact that they haven't done it is kind of interesting. Like, why not? You know, you would think that their opportunity to do that would have been when the game came out for promotion, but they didn't. And so why didn't they? Well, maybe it's because they're waiting for a more opportune time, or because those characters are going to be fighters, and so we can't have spirits and fighters simultaneously, more or less. So I just think that is worth considering. It's a very kind of conspicuous omission that I think is quite interesting. Yeah, it is hard to kind of separate my own hype and my own bias here, but yeah. So those are my predictions, I guess. I'm not sold on Dante. It could still be Dante. I just think that there are choices that could potentially lend themselves to be more fun and interesting, or would make me very happy, personally, or both. So, that's my thoughts. What are your thoughts in these waning hours before the Direct actually occurs? If the Direct has already happened, you can tell me how right I was, or how wrong I was. You could just say, you really goofed that one. It was Waluigi, you dummy. And we can all have a good laugh together. So, I think either way, no matter what, somebody's gonna be happy. And we'll still have more DLC to look forward to in the future. And I personally look forward to the crazy suggestions for characters that are going to come out of the woodwork. I look forward to learning about some, anime girl from 2007 Japan-only puzzle RPG who I had never heard of prior to that bandwagon taking off. So, we all stand to learn new things here during this process. But I am going to stop talking your ear off. I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to say go play Three Houses. I'm going to tell myself to go play Three Houses because this is a problem. I need to finish it. Yeah, that's it. All right. So have a good day. Take care of yourself. Don't get too nervous before the Direct. And remember that we're all friends and we all like Smash Brothers no matter what. Even if it's a character you didn't want or your character didn't make it, it's okay. Because it's a game and it's fun and it's happy, and Sakurai worked really hard no matter what, and we can all just be friends. Please. Please. Goodbye.